Waitress kicked out by in-laws after husband's funeral. They have no idea what was coming. They buried the wrong man. A powerful family. A grieving widow. A secret that could destroy them all. But some secrets refuse to stay buried. What would you do if everything you believed was a lie? Before we move further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for heartwarming stories like this. Likewise, tell us where you are watching from in the comment below. Emma, if you're hearing this, it means I've failed to stop them. But you can. Emma Stone was just a waitress when she married into the Lancaster family, one of the wealthiest dynasties in New York. When her husband James died in a tragic accident, his family wasted no time cutting her out. The reign had a strange elegance to it, steady, solemn, almost rehearsed. As if the sky itself knew when to bow its head. Emma stood in the mud, her black heels sinking with every breath she took. The umbrella she held was flimsy, bought from a gas station on her way to the funeral, and now it trembled in the wind like her hands. Around her, mourners clustered in carefully formed groups, men in tailored suits, women with veils that matched their manicured nails. No one looked at her, not directly. But she could feel them watching, judging. She adjusted her scarf and stared at the polished casket being lowered into the earth. Her husband, James, or at least, the man they said was James. That word echoed inside her head like it didn't belong there. Was a word for endings, for memories, for things you couldn't hold anymore. The priest droned on, his voice distant, too smooth to reach her grief. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Emma blinked against the rain, lips pressed shut. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Not in front of them. She could feel their whispers slither between her ribs like smoke. She's still wearing that cheap scarf. I bet she still lives in that little apartment above the diner. He could have done better. She only married him for the name. They didn't have to speak aloud. Their eyes said enough. The Lancaster family didn't believe she belonged, not before, and certainly not now. She was the waitress who had somehow slipped into their bloodline, a blemish on their legacy. As the crowd dispersed, she turned toward the hearse, the only place that felt like shelter. That's when she saw her. Vivian Lancaster, James' mother. Tall, stiff, the kind of woman who ironed her napkins and curled her words with ice. Her black dress was flawless, her lipstick untouched by the rain. "You've had your moment," Vivian said, low enough so no one else could hear. Her tone didn't waver, not once. "But let's not pretend any longer. James is gone, and so is your place in this family." Emma didn't speak. The words didn't reach her right away. Or maybe they did, and she just refused to let them settle. Vivian leaned in slightly. Her perfume was sharp, too floral, like a disguise. "Whatever inheritance you imagined, whatever sympathy you thought you'd get, it's over. Pack your things and disappear. Do it with dignity. If not for yourself, then for his memory." A black-gloved hand motioned to a waiting car. Two family aides, men who had once nodded politely at Emma during charity events, approached like shadows, ready to escort her away. She didn't argue. What would be the point? The car door shut without a sound. Emma stared out the window as the estate gates slid shut behind her. Kicked out, cut off, and left with nothing but grief, Emma returned to the only place that felt like home, the diner where she'd worked for years. By nightfall, the rain had stopped, but the chill stayed. The diner was quiet, closed early by a kind manager who hadn't known what else to do. Emma let herself in with the key still attached to her lanyard. It felt strange to be back. Like waking up in someone else's life. The buzz of the fridge, the faint scent of grease and coffee, it all made her chest ache. She curled up in the break room on the old plaid couch where she used to take 15-minute naps during double shifts. Her funeral dress felt like it belonged to a stranger now, hanging heavy on her frame. Sleep came in pieces. It wasn't rest, not really. Just silence between thoughts. At some point, perhaps out of reflex, her fingers wandered to the small wooden box in her purse. Inside it was James' watch, a gift she had given him on their second anniversary. It was worn around the edges, a little cracked on the back, but he'd worn it every day until the day they told her he'd died. She turned it over slowly. The same engraving was there to J, always. B. Her thumb brushed the back panel. Click. She froze. The panel had popped open. She had never known it could. Inside the tiny compartment, folded so precisely it looked machine-made, was a square of paper. She pulled it out with trembling fingers, breath catching in her throat. It was his handwriting, no doubt. She would know those letters anywhere. The note was only 6 words. They buried the wrong man. J. Her heart stopped, then surged all at once. The room seemed to tilt slightly. The hum of the fridge vanished. Everything vanished. What did it mean? Suddenly, the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was loaded, waiting. Those 5 words would spark a dangerous hunt for the truth. The fluorescent lights hummed above her like an old memory. Emma stepped through the back door of the diner with hesitation, her hand still curled around the crumpled note in her pocket. They buried the wrong man. The words had stayed with her all night, bleeding into her thoughts, anchoring her in a storm of questions. The diner smelled like burnt toast and dish soap. Familiar, comforting. But tonight, the scent clung to her like a lie she hadn't yet discovered. She locked the door behind her and pulled down the blinds. The place was empty, just how she needed it. The silence made her heart beat louder. Or maybe it was her instincts, the way they stirred when something didn't feel quite right. James always said she had that 6th waitress sense, the ability to know when something was off before it showed up on the bill. She moved quickly, almost mechanically, to the storage closet beside the break room. A worn shoebox sat on the top shelf, exactly where she'd left it months ago. It was filled with mismatched napkins, scratched pins, and the leather-bound journals that used to pass notes back and forth during shifts. Their own game. Their own secret. Back when love came in the form of refill coffee and sweet creamers left beside the register. She sat down at the back booth, his booth, and opened the first journal. Page 1. Table 9 keeps stealing the hot sauce. If I go missing, interrogate them first. J. Her lips twitched, just barely. The handwriting was crooked, confident. Alive. She flipped through pages. Notes, jokes, quick sketches of customers, silly fake orders. Nothing out of the ordinary until halfway through the second journal. A phrase stood out. Scribbled across a list of fake pie specials was a line underlined 3 times. Clock out at 11. Then look inside the receipt roll. Receipt roll? She looked up at the register. It clicked. Emma moved fast, pulling out the old thermal paper spool from the backup drawer. Tucked into the hollow cardboard tube at the center was a small napkin, folded square and clean. She opened it with shaking hands. A doodle of a compass. And beneath it, find your true north. J. She exhaled, slow and unsteady. It wasn't just a cute message. This was him. Still speaking. Still guiding. The compass had a diner-style salt shaker in place of the needle. In the corner, a single number. 17C. Her eyes narrowed. Hidden messages. Secret codes. A trail only she could follow. She swept through drawers, flipped through old order pads, and scanned every inch of their shared journals. The clues came like breadcrumbs. A lipstick-marked coffee filter in the trash bin behind the break room microwave with Baylock, written in blue pen. A crossword puzzle torn from a newspaper, half solved, except for the vertical row where the word storage was written perfectly down the center. James hated crosswords, except when he needed to hide things in plain sight. Another clue came taped under the sugar tray, Emma's favorite hiding spot for holiday tips. It was a faded takeout receipt from a burger joint they both hated. But on the back, in faint ink, someone had scribbled, "Deadbolt at 17C is weak. Go alone. Baylock. Storage. 17C." Over and over, like an address he couldn't risk writing outright. Emma leaned back in the booth, breath caught somewhere between panic and revelation. The patterns were deliberate. She'd seen James plan puzzles for diner scavenger hunts before, for staff birthdays or Sunday game nights. But this wasn't a game. Baylock storage. Unit 17C. Her gaze landed on the window facing the street. The rain had started again, faint, just a mist. Outside, a black SUV cruised by slowly, headlights off. She didn't recognize it, but it didn't stop. Still, the diner suddenly felt smaller. Exposed. Emma folded the napkin, tucked it deep in her back pocket, and stood. Her fingers lingered on the last journal page. If you're reading this, you're smarter than them. Don't stop now. J. Baylock storage. Unit 17C. She didn't know what waited for her there. Maybe answers. Maybe more questions. Maybe danger. But she knew one thing for certain. James had never left her behind. He left her the truth. And now, it was her move. The night air was sharp and silent. Emma stood outside the rusted gates of Baylock storage, the only sound around her the distant hum of power lines and her own heartbeat. The facility was unlit, a shadowy grid of metal doors and forgotten secrets. No cameras. No guards. Just rows of rented silence. Unit 17C. She whispered the number like a spell. The crowbar felt heavy in her hand, its weight unfamiliar. She'd never broken into anything in her life. But tonight, she couldn't afford fear. Her palms were sweating, her breath shallow. But she was here. Because James had brought her here. Because his secrets had led her to this exact patch of concrete. She moved quietly, counting rows, her eyes adjusting to the dark. Every few steps, a motion light flickered on, casting long, shaky shadows. She kept to the edges, pressing herself against the cool metal walls until she finally saw it. 17C. There was nothing special about the unit. Same dull color, same weather lock. But Emma knew better now. What mattered was behind it. She glanced over her shoulder. No cars. No voices. She knelt, wedged the crowbar into the latch, and pried hard. The sound of metal groaning echoed louder than she'd expected. Her arms shook. A bolt snapped, then another. With one final push, the lock clattered to the ground. The door creaked open. It smelled of dust and old air. Cold. Stale. She stepped inside, heart hammering in her chest. The single bulb overhead flickered once, then steadied, humming with electricity. Inside, there wasn't much. A few stacked crates, a rolled rug, and in the center, like it had been waiting just for her, a metal briefcase. She stared at it for a long moment, then knelt. The latches clicked open with a snap that echoed through the unit. Inside, the first thing she saw was a pile of photographs, faded, slightly curled. She picked up the top one. James, standing beside a man in military uniform. Another photo. James shaking hands with someone in a suit, but his face was turned away. The third was worse. James sitting in a restaurant with 3 other men, none of whom Emma recognized. But the look on his face wasn't casual. It was calculated. Focused. Serious in a way he'd never looked with her. Her stomach twisted. Had she known him at all? Beneath the photographs was a plain black burner phone. Dust-covered, but intact. Its screen flickered to life the moment she touched it. One voicemail. Just one. Her hands shook as she pressed play. The sound crackled. Then his voice broke through. Emma. If you're hearing this, it means I've failed to stop them. But you can. She froze. It was him. Not a recording from years ago. Not a prank. His voice was tired, but clear. Direct. Real. They're not just dirty, they're dangerous. My family isn't what you think. Offshore accounts. Stolen land deeds. People who vanished because they got too close. There was a pause. A faint sigh. I couldn't trust anyone. Except you. Look in the case. Find the files marked Arlington. That's where it started. Then, silence. The call ended. Emma sat frozen for a moment, the phone slipping from her fingers. The voicemail echoed in her bones. He knew. He planned this. He's alive. She turned to the documents in the briefcase. Manila folders, thick with typed pages, bank slips, passport scans. She opened the one labeled Arlington. What she saw didn't feel real. Dozens of documents traced a network of real estate transfers, shell companies buying property under false names. Millions moved through offshore banks in the Cayman Islands, then rerouted to charitable organizations run by her in-laws. It was a laundering scheme, wrapped in philanthropy and buried under legal jargon. Emma had worked late-night shifts to afford a used car. Meanwhile, James' family had been stealing entire neighborhoods under the table. She flipped to the next file. This one was worse. A missing person report, nearly 15 years old. A young woman, early 20s. Last seen near a private estate in Vermont. The name meant nothing to Emma, but the address did. It was the same retreat house James' family owned, the one where they'd hosted their annual family-only gatherings. The last page was a letter. Unsent. Written in James' hand. If this ends badly for me, it's because I got too close to what my father buried in Arlington. The woman in the report didn't just disappear. She was silenced. And I think my brother helped cover it up. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. The perfect family. The legacy. The way they had looked at her like she was unworthy. It wasn't about pride. It was about control. They didn't hate her for being a waitress. They feared what she might discover if she got too close. And now she was in the center of it. She sat back, trying to breathe. Her head spun. He didn't die. He vanished. On purpose. To protect her. To finish this. To burn it all down. But something had gone wrong. He'd left this behind for her. The one person he knew would listen, even if the world told her not to. She heard the faint sound of tires crunching gravel outside. Someone was coming. Emma stuffed the documents back into the case, clicked it shut, and turned off the phone. Every instinct told her to run, but she didn't. Not yet. She stepped to the doorway and peeked out. A car, black and boxy, slowed near the front gate. No lights. No license plate. Not now. Not here. She slipped through the back row of units and disappeared into the darkness. But she had the briefcase. She had the voice. And now, she had the truth. With nothing left to lose, Emma did the unthinkable. The chandeliers sparkled like frost above polished cutlery, and wine glasses filled with vintage arrogance. Every detail of the Lancaster estate's grand dining room spoke of power, timeless oil portraits, mahogany floors, and the scent of roses that had been flown in from another country just for tonight. Emma stood at the entrance, uninvited and very aware of it. Her dress was simple, black, unadorned. Her boots were still damp from the rain. She had no makeup, no jewelry, just a flash drive clenched in her pocket and the truth pulsing like a second heartbeat. The room went quiet the second she stepped in. Heads turned. Forks froze midair. Glasses stopped short of lips. At the far end of the long dining table sat her father-in-law, Charles Lancaster, flanked by his perfectly groomed wife, and their adult children, all tailored, all tight-lipped. Society's darling family, dressed in wealth and built on silence. And there, seated where James once would have been, was his older brother, Victor, smirking. Emma walked forward with deliberate steps, letting the silence stretch. Charles rose slowly from his chair. "What is the meaning of this?" "I heard you were celebrating," Emma said. "Didn't want to miss the toast." Gasps flitted around the room like birds startled from trees. Someone whispered her name. Vivian Lancaster's mouth tightened. "You weren't invited." Emma smiled faintly. "That's kind of the theme with your family, isn't it?" A muscle jumped in Charles's jaw. "You were told, very clearly, you no longer belong here." Emma reached into her coat and placed a photograph on the pristine tablecloth, face down. Then she looked Charles square in the eye. "You're right," she said. "I don't belong here. Not at your table. But that man you put in the ground last week? He didn't belong in my husband's casket either." Whispers turned into quiet panic. Guests leaned forward. Vivian reached for the photo. When she flipped it over, the color drained from her face. It was a man. Similar build. Same eyes. Close enough to pass, maybe. But not James. Not even close. "What kind of stunt is this?" Charles snapped. "No stunt," Emma replied. "Just a question. Who did you bury?" Silence fell like a blade. Charles reached for the photo, then crumpled it in his fist. "Security," he barked. "Remove her. Now." Two men in dark suits began moving toward her. Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her other pocket and pulled out the flash drive. She placed it on the center of the table, right beside the untouched silver candelabra. "I wouldn't do that," she said calmly. "Not unless you want tonight's dessert served with a public scandal." Charles froze. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Emma leaned in, just slightly. "That drive contains transaction records, false identities, offshore accounts, and an old missing persons report tied to your little vacation estate in Vermont. A lot of interesting things, really. The kind of things reporters love." Charles's voice dropped, deadly calm. "What do you want?" Emma straightened. "I already have what I need." One of the guests stood, face pale. "Is this true, Charles?" But Charles said nothing. His silence was louder than any denial. Emma turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. She looked back one last time, eyes sweeping over the family who'd tried to erase her. "You buried a stranger in your family grave," she said. "Wonder what the press will think?" Then she walked out. No one stopped her this time. Every shadow held a threat. Every moment could be her last. The road stretched like a ribbon of ink through the outskirts of town. Emma gripped the steering wheel tighter, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror for the third time in as many minutes. Still there. The black SUV with tinted windows. No headlights. No license plate. Just a phantom trailing her since she left the Lancaster estate. Her motel was less than 10 minutes away. Cheap. Remote. No front desk cameras, no security, no questions. At first, it had seemed like the perfect hiding spot. Now, it felt like a trap she'd walked into on her own. She turned off the main road and parked behind the building, heart pounding in her chest. The SUV didn't follow. It continued slowly past the entrance, then disappeared into the fog. But her instinct screamed, "This isn't over." Inside the room, the air was stale. Her bag still lay on the bed where she'd left it, along with the burner phone, the flash drive, and a stack of documents she hadn't yet dared to sort. She double-checked the lock, drew the curtain, and collapsed onto the mattress. That's when she heard it. A faint click. Metal against metal. The sound of someone testing a door handle. Her breath hitched. Then came the soft scrape of footsteps outside the window. She didn't think. She moved. Grabbed the burner, snatched the flash drive, shoved the briefcase under her coat, and climbed out the bathroom window barefoot. The alley behind the motel was narrow and wet with rain, dumpsters lining one side. She didn't look back. She ran, and she didn't stop until she reached the diner. It was past midnight, and the closed sign hung lopsided in the window. But the back door creaked open before she even knocked. Rico stood there, one hand on his belt, the other holding a baseball bat. "Emma," he said. "Jesus, you look like hell." "I've been followed," she panted, stepping inside. Someone tried to break in. He locked the door behind her, his eyes narrowing. Former cop, still built like one. Salt and pepper stubble, faded denim jacket, always chewing a toothpick. He'd eaten pie at the diner every Friday for 5 years. He'd once told her the only thing he trusted in this town was caffeine and regret. Now, it seemed, she could add Emma to that list. "You said you had something to show me," he said, guiding her to the booth farthest from the window. She handed him the burner phone, the briefcase, the documents. She didn't have to explain much. Rico's eyes moved fast, his face unreadable. He understood dirty money. He recognized doctored records and strategic disappearances. "Whistleblower," he muttered, tapping one photo. Name was Colin Brenner. Used to work in government auditing. Went missing 6 months ago. "You're telling me this is the guy they buried?" Emma nodded slowly. James left the trail to him. Rico whistled under his breath, and they covered it up like he was their son. She stared at the burner phone, then tapped the screen to check for any new messages. One unread text. Her breath caught when she saw the sender. Unknown. She opened it. "Trust Rico. Phase 2 begins. Jay?" Her throat went dry. "He knew I'd come to you," she whispered. Rico leaned back, nodding once. "Your husband wasn't just planning to expose them. He was planning how to do it, step by step. You're part of the strategy." The realization hit her like cold water. This wasn't just about escape or revenge. It was a blueprint, a mission, and she was the centerpiece. "Then what's phase 2? She asked, voice low. Rico scratched his chin. "We follow the money. We dig deeper into the fake identities. If your husband left more breadcrumbs, we'll find him." Emma looked down at the phone again. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear anymore. From certainty. James wasn't lost. He was waiting, and the next move was hers. The truth was waiting in the shadows. The train yard was a ghost of its former self. Rows of rusting freight cars, twisted tracks swallowed by weeds, and silence thick enough to choke on. Emma stepped onto the gravel, flashlight in hand, heart hammering like a warning bell. Rico had told her to come alone. He didn't explain why, only that this was the end of the trail, or the beginning of the real one. The wind shifted. A shadow moved between the old rail cars. Emma froze. Then he stepped out. Her breath caught in her throat. James. Not a memory. Not a voice on a phone. Him. He looked thinner. Unshaven. Clothes loose and faded. Eyes haunted, but unmistakably alive. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, as if the universe finally exhaled, Emma ran to him. Their embrace didn't come gently, it collided. Tears hit before the words could. She didn't care about explanations, not yet. Just that he was real, solid, warm beneath her fingertips. "I didn't want to leave you," James said, his voice cracked from silence. "But once they knew what I'd found, there was no way out. Disappearing was the only option. And you. Emma, you were the only one I trusted to finish what I started." She stepped back, tears still burning her eyes. "You should have told me." "I couldn't risk it," he said. "Not with them watching." He pulled a folded map from his jacket and tapped the edge. "The last piece is in a church. One I went to as a kid. There's a safe under the altar. Inside it is the video of the confession. Everything they're trying to erase." Emma stared at him. "Then let's go get it." But James didn't answer. Instead, his eyes flicked past her, narrowing into suspicion. She turned slowly. A dark silhouette stood on the far end of the yard. Then another. And another. Shadows moving where shadows shouldn't. "We're not alone," he said grimly. Emma's pulse surged. So the family knew. Or worse, they'd always known. The reunion was over. The chase was back on. The final piece of the puzzle lay hidden in a forgotten church. The tires screeched against gravel as Emma's car skidded to a stop at the foot of the hill. The church stood above, dark and ancient against the bruised sky, its steeple slicing the early light like a blade. They were close. Behind them, the growl of engines echoed, a pack of black vehicles chasing through fog and dust, just seconds behind. James bolted from the passenger side, briefcase in hand. "It's under the altar," he said. "Second drawer, locked but cracked. I left it there months ago." Emma didn't ask how he knew it would still be there. She just ran. The church door groaned open, revealing a sanctuary frozen in time. Just clung to the pews. A single candle flickered near the altar, casting trembling shadows across the stone floor. They moved fast. Emma dropped to her knees and pried at the old wooden panels behind the altar. James pulled aside a tattered rug, revealing a hidden compartment sealed with rusted hinges. Inside, a battered black box. She opened it. A flash drive, labeled in her husband's handwriting. "Confession. Play everything." Footsteps pounded outside. "No time to edit," Emma breathed. "We go live." She pulled out the burner phone and opened her streaming app, one they'd preloaded for this exact moment. No edits. No spin. Just truth, broadcast raw and unfiltered. She hit go live. Within seconds, her face appeared on a growing number of screens. Then, the video began, a hidden camera feed showing Charles Lancaster, glass of bourbon in hand, speaking too freely. Names, amounts, details of bribes. Mentions of the whistleblower Colin Brenner, whose disappearance was no longer a mystery but a coordinated silencing. Murder, fraud, cover-ups. The empire cracked in real time. Viewers poured in. Comments lit up. And not long after. Sirens. Dozens of them. In one desperate broadcast, the truth exploded. Police stormed the Lancaster estate as the sun broke over the trees. The house of cards collapsed before breakfast. Arrests. Freezes on assets. Headlines born before morning coffee. James stepped outside the church with his hands raised, surrendering not to punishment, but to closure. His statement would finish the unraveling. He was no longer hiding. He was witness. And Emma? She stood in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the rising sun, watching it all end. Or maybe begin. Weeks later, the diner hummed again with life. Customers returned, drawn not just to the coffee, but to the woman behind the counter. Emma had bought it out, every square inch of it, paid for by a settlement earned through fire and truth. Her story had spread across every media outlet. Yet somehow, she still preferred the quiet of refilling sugar jars and slicing pie. A stranger walked in one morning, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a curious tone. "You ever think about writing a book?" Emma wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "No need," she said, pouring his coffee. "I lived it. And that was enough." Don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone who loves justice served ice cold. Drop a comment below sharing what you would have done in Emma's position.